Good evening. Tonight's meeting is for the Nonprofit Organizations Subcommittee. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Counsel Getchiat.
Here.
Counsel Mercier.
Here.
Counsel Noon.
Here.
Counsel Robinson. 3 present.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Tonight's discussion is on the federal entitlement funding, and I think we should open up the meeting to our DPD Director, Giovanni Baez-Rose.
Thank you, Counselor. We prepared a brief presentation for tonight that we'd like to just start going over. We had previously submitted to the Council an informational that described a little bit of the, I don't know why that's doing that. Can you check that? To describe a little bit of the changes that we're on the receiving end related to our HUD entitlement fund. So we wanted to just share some information with the council and with the public. There it is. Great. So just a quick overview. The City of Lowell is an entitlement community. That means that we have a percentage of our population that would be considered low, moderate income through the federal government. And as such, there is like a calculation that we essentially get of funding annually allotted to us. This is not funding that is a competitive request. I think that's something that's important for people to understand. We're not applying for grants to get these funds. This is like an automatic distribution from the federal government to entitlement communities. Lowell is one of those communities. So we get 3 sort of essentially buckets of entitlement funds annually. Those are community development block grants or CDBG funds, ESG or emergency solutions grant, and home. So CDBG is the bucket of funds that generally goes to quality of life improvement things. We spend those funds on like small business assistance programs and open space projects. It's the bucket of funds that we generally also sub-grant out to nonprofit organizations. ESG is focused only on homeless services. So that's where we can support organizations providing shelter services or homelessness prevention. And then home is for housing specific projects. And on average, we get, around $2 million of CDBG, less than 200,000 of ESG, and home has been roughly around 750. So that number fluctuates slightly annually. And so what we try to do is make some assumptions based on funds that we had gotten previously in the last year to assume what we're going to be getting in the coming year. And that is the baseline that we use when we're starting to talk about how much funding we'll be able to put out into the community. So we sort of get a generally consistent amount of funds from the feds, or have previously. And so every year we kind of will work on an assumed amount basis while we're going through our RFP process, because the federal government doesn't finalize the exact amount that they'll be providing us until a much later date. And we can't wait until we get that information from them to start our RFP process. So we have to move forward with some assumptions. And so this FY26 is what we actually got, correct? Yeah. And so that's what we're working with. Oh, what did I do? I can't be trusted with this thing. Okay. So community development block grants, it is a program to essentially support low and moderate income neighborhoods. So what that means is that we are only able to spend these funds in qualified census tracts. So it does mean that there are certain areas of the city where these funds cannot be invested in. This is a breakdown of where we kind of send these funds: housing, economic development, public facilities, public services, and administration. And the administration component, I want to be clear, does fund staff. 100% of 8 staff members, I think, in the planning department, their salaries are funded through entitlement funds. We use these funds to support nonprofit organizations. As I had said previously, we use these funds in direct small business support, and for funding things like parks and open space projects. And this year we just had, just a few weeks ago, we opened Durkin Park on Chelmsford Street, which is adjacent to the Lincoln School. And that, for example, was a park project that was paid 100% by CDBG funds. The Emergency Solutions Grant, so again, shelter operations, homelessness prevention, and administration. That's sort of the breakdown of these funds. Again, it's less than $200,000, so these are not huge grants that we're providing to organizations, but we are able to support some organizations. You'll see here, Elliott Church, for example, the House of Hope, Alternative House, have all been grant recipients of these funds in the past. And then our home program, these funds go to, we have a partnership agreement with the Merrimack Valley Housing Partnership for our first-time home buyer program. This is a program that will income qualify eligible first-time home buyers, and we provide direct down payment assistance funding to them to help offset the cost of purchasing a home. We have requirements from HUD that 15% of these funds go to community housing development organizations. I believe there are two. One. How many do we have in Lowell? Three? Quick.
Yeah, it's about
two organizations essentially fall under this designation. It has to do with the board makeup. And so there have to be low mod income people included on the board of directors of those organizations in order for them to qualify as a CHODO. And then we have funds that go to, in addition to first-time home buyers, we do housing rehab programs. So for income qualified applicants, sometimes people, even if they own their home, are really kind of at the margins. And if something happens, it could be catastrophic to their ability to stay in their homes. And so we have a home rehab program that for income eligible folks, we would be able to make repairs to their home to help ensure that they're able to stay there. And again, also covers the cost of administration for the program itself. So every year we administer the funds, the federal entitlement funds, through an RFP process. We advertise the RFP, we release an RFP, we sort of get the word out to as many nonprofit organizations as we possibly can. We do require people to come into a mandatory session to learn about what is in the RFP. And then we sort of open the grant period. They are required to submit applications. All of that review happens. There's, a review, recommendations are made. We often will bring that through the city manager to the council for your vote and approval, and that gets submitted essentially to HUD for their approval. And I think one of the things that's important this year, things that are kind of changing, is that there is language now that has come down essentially from the federal government that is absolutely going to impact what we can put in our RFP this year. And so we are trying our best to ensure that we're informing the nonprofits about these changes, about the new languages that's in the RFPs, making sure that they understand what is going to be expected of them as a grant recipient if they agree to accept these funds, and to understand why the city may be making different funding decisions than we have in the past. So I think it's important for people to understand that some of the guidance that we're getting from the federal level, from the National Community Development Association, for example, which is helping communities like Lowell try to understand what these newer government regulations mean. We're trying our best to absorb that information into our current RFP and try to get in front of it before we submit anything to HUD that may require them holding up approval of our action plan. We have seen examples in other communities where people have submitted plans to the feds, and instead of saying, like, we don't like this one section, so we're going to hold off on this, they just say, like, your whole plan, your entire approval is on hold until we can you have to change this one section of the plan. So we're really trying to ensure that what we submit to them up front is going to sort of meet the standards as they've established. So we are going to be hosting a public session for nonprofits that will be available on Zoom. We have found that has been the most accessible option for nonprofits to participate. We are also going to offer people some technical assistance during that period to clarify for them, again, more details about the changes that are in the RFP and give them hopefully some guidance to be able to submit a compliant application this year. And so that's sort of ongoing right now. At the end of January, we'll be accepting all of the final applications with a decision and recommendation will be coming in front of the council in the spring, and then we'll be submitting that to HUD. Specifically, I want to talk about the changes that that have been sort of coming down from the federal government. So I think there are a few things in addition to some language changes based on the last Trump administration budget. CDBG, home, and ESG are all being recommended to be zero funded, essentially. Just those programs would be gone. This has happened before. That was a recommendation when he was, president previously. It didn't play out that way. So I think we're all being very sort of hopeful that that's going to remain. But I think it is important that people understand that the recommendation, at least from the president's budget, is that these programs would be eliminated entirely. That would significantly impact nonprofit organizations. Obviously, we wouldn't be able to provide our grants. As I mentioned earlier, we have 8 staff members in the Department of Planning that are funded by these programs, and that would be problematic as well. And then in addition to that, we just wouldn't be able to take the kind of investment and use these funds appropriately. Examples, park projects, the senior center lease, our first-time home buyer programs, the programs we use to support our small businesses, all of those things would be significantly negatively impacted. In addition to that sort of just very general structural budgeting impact, there are more specific changes that have kind of come down. Organizations that are applying for these funds and will be awarded as essentially a sub-grantee need to be very clear about being in compliance with the number of things from the federal government. One is that they are not doing any diversity, equity, and inclusion work. They are not providing any access or information related to abortion care. They are not using more than 2 genders in any of their language. That also means using, he, him, she, her kind of pronouns in documents and those kinds of things. And in referencing LGBTQ plus services. Their hiring practices, job descriptions, handbooks, all of these things essentially cannot have any language related to like employee characteristics. Again, they're defining that as being like DEI, and so it was unacceptable. Organizations can't reference or promote climate change, environmental justice, climate resiliency, and they cannot provide any kind of benefit to undocumented immigrants. So what that means is that so there are a couple of things. One, organizations are essentially in the grant agreements will have to sign off as an organization that they are in compliance with all of these things. So we've had to add language into our RFP that says if you are accepting these funds, you know that you cannot be doing any of the following things. There is also an expectation that staff, our community development staff does do, what is it called when you go to monitoring, ongoing monitoring of organizations. There would be an expectation that our staff is monitoring organizational websites, ensuring that they're in compliance with these things, monitoring the programs that they're offering. When we do monitoring compliance, these components are now having to be added into our sort of checks that the staff is doing. We have some experience recently because of the ARPA program had, a number of requirements that organizations had to sort of agree and follow on before we were able to fund them. So we have a baseline for how to include this language into our RFP and our grant agreements, but asking organizations that serve vulnerable populations in a very diverse community like Lowell to abolish any diversity, equity, and inclusion language in their documentation and in their programming that is being funded is going to be difficult. And I think that that's one of the reasons why we brought the informational forward. It's one of the reasons why we asked for this subcommittee, because I think it's really important that everybody is very clear that these are not just like arbitrary changes coming down from DPD because, we wanted to make the change. It is sort of coming down from HUD that we need to maintain compliance with, or all of the entitlement funds that the city would get essentially would be at jeopardy. I think we really want to make sure that organizations understand that this is a voluntary, it is a grant opportunity. They don't have to apply for it. They don't have to accept it. Although we are very clear that a $50,000 grant for a small organization could be a pretty big deal to their operating budget. And so we understand that CDBG and these grants are important for organizations, but I think we are also really wanting to ensure that they understand what they are agreeing to when they accept these funds. I think the last I did this wrong, sorry. And so just to run down sort of an example of how this breaks down. So verification of immigration status is something that we have never had to do before. So how that impacts us and what that actually means now is that if you are a first-time home buyer and you're looking to buy a house, in addition to the income verification documentation, you're going to need to provide us proof of your legal status. And there is a federal program, online program called SAVE, which the city would essentially need to put individual information into to confirm that person's legal status. So that's documentation and information that we haven't been collecting previously, and that we would be required to do. And that's information that we would not only collect, but we would collect and input into this federal SAVE system. That would also be true for any small business expansion loan, and then any homeless prevention under ESG, or any nonprofit organizations that are taking the grant funds and then paying for things on behalf of people. So would that be like rent?
Yeah, it'd be rent.
Turn your microphone on.
Yeah, that would include rent, let's say stipends if they were getting paid, employment through the grant as well. So, or like a child care voucher. So anything that could be direct payments on behalf of other household.
So we would have to collect that information again, and then staff would have to put that into the SAVE system. That would do whatever it does in the background, confirm that, and then we'd be able to move forward. So I think that could make people nervous. It makes us nervous. It's not something that we've had to do before, and it's something that I think that it's important for us that people understand that the reason we're asking for it is because they're accepting these federal funds, and that it's not a requirement necessarily of the city of Lowell, but if you're trying to access these funds from the city of Lowell, this is something that you're gonna have to provide us. DEI, abortion, two genders, climate change, all of these things, that doesn't matter the project, you have to commit to it. It has to be something that you commit to. We have the ability we would have to monitor compliance with that for any program that's funded. But there are some things that are not funded, that are not impacted by this, that are sort of exemptions to this, or just because of what they are, it's irrelevant. So shelters, street outreach, those are things that, you can't be collecting this kind of information from people when they're sort of interacting with you on a real ad hoc basis. And so I think there's been a recognition of that, and because of that, it's something that's exempt. Public infrastructure and facilities, so that's what we use to, invest in parks, the senior center, open spaces, those kinds of things. We don't need to sort of provide that information. We're not giving a direct benefit to any one individual. We don't need to collect that kind of information. It would be exempt. And so these are some of the things that wouldn't necessarily be impacted by this, and for that reason is also why we're making thoughts that we would maybe shift focus and focus on some of these non-exempt
Councilor
things.
Mercia.
So thank you. Yvonne, are we saying that the senior center is not in trouble with any of this?
So that would be correct. That would be something that doesn't have to worry about this. The only way the senior center could be negatively impacted is if HUD essentially cut these programs and these funds were just no longer available to us.
Okay, because we rely on paying them a certain amount every year, so
Yeah,
that's...
the lease agreement that we have previously had for the senior center and what I assume will be happening moving forward is fully funded through CDBG
Thank
funds.
you, that's fine.
So that's actually it for our presentation. I think we're just trying to get the word out and let people know kind of what we're dealing with.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open it up to anybody in the audience who would like to ask a question or has any comments on what they've just heard. If you do, please come up to the mic and state your name for the record and what organization or where you live in the city. If we don't see anybody, then we'll go back to the council and we'll close that portion. If you could just please say your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Wisniewski. I'm the board chair at the Open Pantry of Greater Lowell. And one of the things that I thought when I was listening to people speak, not people, one person, I guess, we are no longer able to apply for the CDBG grant. We used to, but we can't now because of the way it's changed. And that had a real impact on us. And I think people, I really would like people to understand that pantries are an incredible gift to this community. Basically, the people we serve, we give out, or would like to give out, about 6,000 pounds of food every week. And we do that with 2 part-time paid people. About 50% of the people that we serve live 200% or more below poverty, and about 50%, maybe even more than that, walk to us. So we are essential to the people who are downtown. Pantries have had money just ripped away from them. And I don't know, I don't know what you can do about it, but I would certainly ask for recommendations to the state for some kind of basic support for pantries. I can't imagine what would happen if we're not able to continue our work. We're very lucky. Recently we've had, a lot of publicity, and so we've had people giving money, but we can't, pantries in general can't survive on, our safety net's been taken from us. We can't survive on, oh, we got a check this month, great. Oh, next month we don't have a check. And for bang for the buck, we're an incredible asset to this community, and we really do need to be supported. And if there's any way you can rewrite so that we can get some CDBG grant money back again, I would really like that. I also just want to pop this into your mind. A lot of communities support their pantries by actually providing housing for them. Anything like that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Could I ask you a question before you go?
Sure.
And you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. What is the reason why you can't apply?
Why did I come by?
No, why can't you apply for this grant?
It's the way it's, well, at least my understanding was that it was like 60,000, it had to be 60,000. And I don't know about it this year. I know we couldn't apply for it last year. It just seemed it wasn't a grant that was written for us. Also, something I noticed, we're not able to buy our food from the Merrimack Valley Food Bank, and it looks to me like the CDBG grant the only place that food is supported is at the Merrimack Valley Food Bank. So the Merrimack Valley Food Bank is a wonderful organization, but they only give 2,000 pounds of food each week to those pantries. We go to the Greater Boston Food Bank because we want to be able to get as much as 6. So I would say something needs to be done about the way your CDBG grant is written if you actually want to support pantries.
We have State Rep Hung here, so if there's anything the state can do, I'm sure he would be willing to try to help.
Be
But
glad to talk
if I could just ask
anytime.
Yvonne.
Yeah, I do just want to clarify. I think that the issue is that for a while, one of the things that we were doing were much smaller grants, a lot of much smaller grants. And so the scale of those projects were more manageable and reasonable for smaller nonprofit organizations over the last several years for a variety of reasons, but one of them being just the administration of that many grants. We've consolidated and encouraged people to apply collaboratively for larger grants instead of providing individual smaller grants. And so I think there's a recommendation, if I'm hearing correctly, that we consider going back to that older model. But there's not anything that keeps pantries from, we don't have a prohibition against pantries applying for CDBG. It's just the way the program is now administered.
Right. Okay. Anything else?
Did that answer? Do you have anything else to add?
I mean, I think we've been very quiet. We've been here for 43 years. We were the first pantry in Lowell. We're obviously the oldest pantry in Lowell. And it isn't until fairly recently that we have started to be impacted by such a negative way. I mean, we were quiet. We went about our business. We gave out food. That was it. And now we have just had to become much more proactive and try to get attention from people in the city to help support us. It's new territory for us.
Councilor Mercia?
So I feel your pain when you say that we're going to help smaller individual pantries. But if I don't understand I don't understand what it is that we can do to help you.
Okay, so two things that you could do to help.
Where is your pantry? Where is your
Hurd
open?
Street, we're at 13 Hurd Street.
Oh, Hurd Street. Okay, that's where you are. Are you saying you're so big that you don't fit into the criteria because you're?
Well, applying for a $60,000 grant, the way it was.
Oh,
set up.
you're smaller. You're smaller, right?
Right.
Okay. Well, why don't you combine with another
We used
Pantry.
to. We actually used to apply with
Boston?
Catholic Charities.
Oh, I
And-
see.
And then it just didn't work anymore, the way it was set up. And I'm not the one who wrote that grant. I have written very few grants. I'm just telling you what the people, our ED.
Can you
I
kind of
can-
merge? Can you kind of join the Merrimack Valley Food Bank and take your little portion?
Well, the Merrimack, we get our food from the Greater Boston Food Bank. They both give out USDA food. You can't double dip. We can't get,
Oh, no, oh, you can't.
it's one or the other.
Yeah.
And the Merrimack Valley Food Bank, they max you out at, I think, about 2,000 pounds a week. And the Greater Boston Food Bank, we're able to get closer to 6,000 pounds of food.
Well, you have Boston still to work with?
Yes, I mean, they do help us. So we have a very small budget, and so when we lost $15,000, that doesn't seem like a lot of money, but it was a lot of money.
Yes, I hear
And
you.
then add to that, like other grants, a grant that we usually got for $7,000 came in at $1,000. I think online, we use a program called Zeffy to collect when people make donations. So I think it was this spring, Zeffy sent out a message saying that across the board, there was I can't remember if it was 37 or 39% decrease in the amount of giving to nonprofits across their platform. So the loss of something like 15,000, another grant coming in at 1,000 when we were expecting 7,000, a decrease of I think maybe 37% decrease in the number of people giving nonprofits. And then add to that, that at the very same time, we had a 39% increase in the number of people coming to the pantry, and that was before SNAP.
But CDBG funding is what you're looking for, right?
That and
Okay.
recommendations to the state to support pantries in general. If we're losing federal funding, we need to
There's your
have,
state rep right there.
When you leave here, if you can just see Manager Golden, he's in the audience right there, so if you just go see Mr. Manager, I think he'll be able to help you on your way.
all right, thank you.
Because we are concerned about your dilemma. That's sad, very
Yeah,
sad.
no, it really is, because, you know, we had a young woman, she was pregnant, and she was so concerned that she came in every single week, scared that her baby wasn't going to be born right. And even though we don't give out food every week, we gave her food every week because she was so anxious about it. We had a grown man come in who was probably in his 50s, who broke down and started to cry because he had not had to use the pantry since 2018, and he felt this tremendous amount of shame that he had to come in. We took care of him. We convinced him it was all right. But, you know, if you could see the people and if you could see the situations, people would, I'm sure, would be much more willing to help us.
I think Manager Golden will give you the
I
help you
think
need.
there's the man you're looking for right at the doorway.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Would anyone else in the audience like to speak? Mr. Rivera, if you can just state your name and the organization you represent for the record, please.
Thank you so much, councilors. Dan Rivera, the Coalition for the Better Acre. These are definitely very difficult times for nonprofits. Trying to do the work to the most needy among us, the people with the highest pressures on them in society, at the same time trying to fit them into these blocks that the federal government has put before us. Very difficult. And so with the historic diversity that the acre has, and we really focused in the acre, it makes it really difficult to try to help folks in that way. I will tell you that the development staff, Giovanni Baez-Rose and her staff have been very, very professional in the way they've gotten this information out, making sure that we stay on track and get them the information they need so that we don't make a mistake and end up hurting the rest of the CDBG application. And so I just want to say you have a group of people that are really on the ball with this piece of it, especially since this is kind of different. This has never really been seen before. The policing of language, the policing of people's immigration status. It's just really, governments haven't really been in that business unless you were in the immigration business. And so I think that brings this difficulty. I just want you to know you have a team that's really doing good by that. We do have some solace with the state government. Governor Healy and her team doing emergency food dollars that are coming through. We partner with Merrimack Valley Food Bank, the Lowell Housing Authority, the Greater Lowell Community Foundation. They have been kind of regionalize some of that food money that comes through, and they've been really helping the Coalition for Better Acres pantry that we have over there on 517 Moody Street that we focus on. Again, mostly people in the acre, but it does make this thing more difficult. We think that in the end, less people will be served by it. Even you're going to maybe have money that you can't use because you're going to try to avoid these roadblocks that you have. I'm not sure that you can do anything about it except that to do the best you can, and I think they are doing that to make sure that we don't set off any red flags for people. You know, in one sense, you got to do some red flags so you can get the people you want to serve, but at the same time, you got to be sure that you don't do it in a way that causes grief for the rest of the application. And then when talking about housing dollars, there was mentioned how some of the home funds and things like that. It has always been difficult to get access to affordable housing without having an immigration status. And so at least people with an immigration status that need the affordable housing can have access to that. The undocumented folks are the people that end up getting jammed up. But thank God that you can still use some shelter money to serve those folks. But there's difficult times. You do have a good staff going on. There is some state money coming in. Our pantry is open twice a week, and we again try to do the best we can with those dollars that come through. But hopefully together we can get through this time, and then once we get to the other side, we'll have a different set of criteria and work through that.
Thank you for your kind words. I do believe the council has put our faith in trying to get this information out there along with DPD, and that's why we're here tonight. And I think that DPD has done an amazing job at getting this to the people that are affected by it. And hopefully we can all find common ground and save what the purpose of the money is, and not skew the purpose of what the money is for. And hopefully, as a council, we can back into this and try to make it as easy as possible for everyone who applies, because you need to know early on, and it's such a short time frame when you're looking at January, and we're only 3 weeks out, and it's already here in mandatory meetings and everything else, sessions, and how do you get into a lot of things? We have the same issues in our agency, the city agency, with the same problems. So we got to really work together with everyone and try to figure out, is there a path that all of us can try to get these monies to the places that they well deserve to be. Does anybody else from the audience have anything? Jane?
Mr. Chairman, there is a person on Zoom. I'm not sure if she wants to speak, but I'll invite her in if she does.
We can let her in if you...
Catherine?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes,
Hi.
we can.
I'm actually on the board with Rebecca and came here to support her. I think she did a great presentation, but I just want you to know also that we are working all the time trying to raise money, and it's a challenge, and we thank you for your help.
Do we have your name down, Catherine?
Catherine Carr, Karr. I'm also on the board of the Open Pantry of Greater Lowell.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for coming on board.
Thank you.
Jane, would you like to say a few words?
Sure. Jane Calvin, Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust. I too would like to commend the DPD staff for being so really open with us and somewhat strategic in laying out the information and helping us plan. The Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust uses our CDBG funding for tree planting. So many of the park projects that happened this fall happened because we personally went out there and tagged the trees, and then we worked partly with the Green and the Gateway City staff from the state to help physically plant those trees. But we actually, we pay for the tree stock and go out and I would personally hate to put any of those kind of projects at risk, and really appreciate how open the staff have been with really making it clear. My challenge is going to be working around the climate change language. That's trees have a lot to do with climate change, but they also have a lot to do with beautification and have a lot of other positive impacts on the city as well. So I'll be working that angle. But again, thank you for the opportunity to have this meeting tonight to get this all out there.
That was my thought too, when they said climate change was the tree plantings. How do you get around that? But I think you'll figure out some good wording.
I think we've been using extreme weather events. That seems to pass the test.
I do think it makes sense to use that, because it does do both, and especially up in the Northeast, where we could probably get around it better than anywhere. But, well, thank you for everything you do. Does anybody else in the audience have anything to add? Okay, with that being said, I'll open it up to Councilor Vesna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Giovannis and the team for the preparation and presentation tonight. First off, I just want to start off with the number you have here from HUD, the HUD entitlement funding, CDBG, Emergency Solution Grant, and Home. These three funding. This is what we assume the amount we're getting, FY 2026. That does not mean that we're going to get that amount in 2027. Is that correct? Could be less.
Correct. So it is based on an average. The language that we use in our RFP process essentially says that it all is contingent upon the final award from HUD. So sometimes we may need to revisit awards once decision or recommendations are made to like adjust the numbers slightly.
Right. So those organizations that receive CDBG money, either be CMA, CBA, or any of these nonprofit organizations, do they also have to vet immigration status for the people that they serve?
Not unless they are doing direct. So if I'll use CBA as an example. If the CBA is running a program and they are a part of their program is that they are gonna offer stipends to staff, then yes, we would expect that information would have to be collected and submitted.
So the change, not just in their mission statement that align with DEI, but also looking at immigration status of the people that they give stipend to, and also not the service, the people that provide service to no need to provide whether you document or not document. Is that correct?
Correct. So if the CBA was running a program that was an after-school program or something for kids, I'm making this up, and that's what they want, that's what they submitted an application for, saying we want to fund this program. And then with the funds, they're buying materials for the program. They signed up for some software that they're using for the program. In that sense, where they're not actually giving funds directly to an individual, then they as an organization would still need to be compliant with the DEI and all of those other sort of things, but they wouldn't necessarily be required to collect that individual immigration status information from people. It's only if they're doing a direct sort of payment to an individual.
So organization like, say, domestic violence organization, right? The House of Hope, Healing, Alternative House, if they don't do stipend to individual, just provide service to women that are in crisis or the victim of domestic violence, no information in terms of immigration status, no need to be wet on that. Is that correct? Correct.
If they're using the funds to fund their programming and it's not going to pay to individuals or on behalf of individuals, then they wouldn't need to collect that information. They would need to be compliant with all of the other requirements, though.
So the emergency solution grant for the individual for home rehab and or down payment, those individuals in the past, we do not ask for their immigration status and all that. Now we have to do that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that's through home funds.
Yeah.
We have not previously asked people to provide proof of their immigration status as a part of those programs. You know, what people have provided to their banks as a part of their mortgage lending program and all of that stuff is sort of separate from what we have asked for. But previously, we have not asked for that information, so that is a change. It also means that for every one of the small businesses in the city that's like looking for a small business grant or something like that, if the business is in that individual person's name, we would also be expected to request that information, which is a change.
So this federal directive also, does that apply to the money that pass through from the Justice Department to the police and through UTEC and other organizations?
That I'm not sure about. These directives have come down to us from HUD. I mean, what HUD is saying is that these are all directives that are that this information is consistent with executive orders that have been issued by this administration. So, you know, I can't speak to what those exact programs are saying, but you know, these are not executive orders that have come down just for HUD. These are executive orders that are in place for the entire federal government.
Possibly could be just that it hasn't arrived yet. Is that correct? Correct.
I mean, I think in the planning department, we also received, for example, a brownfields remediation grant that we got $5 million to do remediation work in a brownfield along the Merrimack River in the Centerville neighborhood, we did get comments back to ask us to adjust some of the language in that application to ensure that it remained consistent with the executive order. So that was something that happened well in advance of this HUD language, and now we're dealing with stuff coming down from HUD. So I think it is trickling down through federal agencies at a different pace, depending on the agency.
I'm really happy, Mr. Chairman, that the DPD Giovanni Roses and her team really doing this informational sessions to nonprofit and individual that's going to certainly impact by it, do what we can to help alleviate it and making sure that they address those concerns before they submit any RFP to DPD. And so this technical assistance and elsewhere that the organization DPD is going to do certainly go a long way in helping making sure that organizations that really need this money continue to receive it, and that at the same time comply with the directive from the federal government. So I hope that continue to happen. So thank you very much for tonight. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Noon. Councilor Mercier?
This is a change that is kind of shocking to some degree, but I think that we have a team that can be very creative. So before someone submits to someplace, could you scan it to look to see if they be the point person that can look at it to see if it's going to make it or not make it? And I'm certainly sure that we can do everything we can to help the organizations because of these changes. I don't know what's going on, but I know that my father came to this country as an immigrant. And if they treated my father like this as a young boy and his mother, that would be tough because he wasn't a citizen yet. He was an immigrant. I'm not saying illegal, but I don't know if it falls on all immigrants or whatever. It's relatively sad. It's like we have a program to give out food, but if we give you a specific stipend to go to the store to get that, because you're an individual, now we got to give you, cross-examining you like you're a thief. I feel bad for that, but that's why I'm asking. I know you work very hard to create programs and do things, and you try to go by the book, but please be compassionate to help our organizations so they don't have to go all through the work and get denied. There's ways around it, and I'm sure you could help them. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. And I do just want to give credit to Elliot Yaffa and his team in community development. So we have structured the timeline this year for the RFP so that we'll be releasing the RFP publicly on January 5th, but they're not due until the 30th. And so up until like the week before, essentially, up until January 23rd, we're willing to have those discussions with nonprofit organizations, provide them technical assistance, have a review and talk about what they're planning to put in their applications, just to walk people through.
That's important.
In advance of the deadline. We don't want people to find out that they missed the mark after the deadline. We're trying to get in front of it. So we did bake that into our process this year. I think we're still approaching this eyes wide open. It's complicated and complex and is not going to be necessarily an easy thing, but we are trying to provide that technical assistance to folks.
Thank you so much.
Councilor Noon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, Mr. Chairman, since we have the directors of CBA, Dan Rivers here, and he's also saw the presentation of on key change to the entitlement funds. If I could ask him a question, if he could just answer us this. Hearing all this change in terms of the directive, like say, your mission statement or website cannot have DEI, there's no abortion access, and all this change. how you feel? What was your confidence? Are you confident that your organization will try to, put out language, either be on vision or statement or website so that you continue to receive grant if need be?
Well, I tell you, I think when Charlie Gargiulo and the immigrant members of the neighborhood put this organization together, they had in mind to help all of the people in the acre.
I know.
And we're going to strive to do that. When we apply for the funds, again, the housing money that goes to build affordable housing, we've always had to have some type of immigration status to get into those units. However, our pantry, our ESL program is, ESOL program is to give people the knowledge of English, and so you're going to have to go after folks that are going to need to learn English. So we're going to struggle with it. And it's not like we're striking that. If you go to the mission of the organization, it doesn't mention that stuff, because if you're working in the acre, you have historically a diverse population, and you're talking about the census tracts we're talking about. Again, geographically, you're gonna be talking about the people who are diverse, who have different language needs, who have different immigration statuses. We will continue to do that work. We're just gonna have to find different funding for it. And the funding that we do get, because we are partnering with Merrimack Valley Food Bank, and we're partnering with the Greater Lowell Community Foundation for some of that funding. Some of it's state and some of it's federal, so we'll make our way that way. But I think the board would tell you that we don't have any, plans to change who we are and what we're trying to do and the people who we're trying to help. And I stand with them on that. But what you'll find is throughout Lowell, what I've learned is the nonprofits are, like Councilor Mercer said, we're very, creative on the way we try to get things done, and we're going to have to continue to do that. And for us in the acre, I think it's going to be, because geographically, we're going to help the people in that area.
I share your concern about this difficult time that we are facing now. Thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Noon. My questions are always, when government, what are their goals in these programs, and what's the outcome they seek? How do they balance out? And when I look at this is roughly, what, $3 million? How many nonprofits do we see regularly apply for the RFP, roughly?
I would say we get anywhere between 18 to 24 organizations apply every year.
So the housing one always catches me too when I look at it. Is that basically level funded for the last 10 years?
Pretty much. I mean, the problem with some of the funding, because we're an entitlement community, any community that has a population of over 50,000, they're eligible to receive the funding. So as populations increase, and the federal budget last year, was a continuing resolution, so it was a balanced budget from the year before. But with more communities eligible for the funds, the money goes down. So if it's a balanced budget, we'll always get a little bit less.
And housing prices went through the roof. So basically, the dollar's a penny today. And how much can each applicant receive max if they apply?
So last year we had 4 grants each. We had 3 buckets of funding last year, 2 for quality of life, 2 for special populations, and 2 for food programs, and each of them were awarded $50,000 each. Because we have a 15% cap for public services, which equates to about $300,000 a year.
So that's only 6 people, right? Instead of 300,000, if it's 50,000 each, it's only 6. That's not a lot.
It's 6 organizations.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not a lot. And then they give out their portion, whatever they're given, so it's a lot less than 50,000 a person who applies. So when it deletes down to the actual people we're trying to serve, we don't really get much money to them if there's administrative costs and everything else in between. So that's the hard part in a city like ours. our issue is how do we get the dollar to the person at the bottom run without all the government in between taking their portions and all the red tape in between? And I think we've seen that dive down in our city. Affordable housing is not affordable as much as people say that. Affordable housing, in my opinion, should be affordable home ownership, so people can get generational wealth rather than giving other people wealth to have higher administration and everything else in between that are really taking from people's wealth that they could have generationally. That's concerning to me when you're looking at what you just basically broke down for us is pennies hit the person in between the funding down, which that's the sad part of trying to get there. And I just saw Miss Callery just walked in. If there's anything that she wants to ask a question before we close out our last comments, she certainly can come to the mic and speak. She just give your name and organization you represent for the clerk.
Thank you. Sorry, I was watching at home.
That's okay. I was late too.
My name is Debbie Callery. I'm the executive director at the Merrimack Valley Food Bank. We are a grateful recipient of CDBG funds. I do want to clarify that we partnered with Coalition for a Better Acre this year on our grant application because it was encouraged. So our request was to feed the acre, basically, and it included all of the schools in the acre through our children's feeding program, the individuals from the acre that visit the Coalition for a Better Acre pantry, of which there's a lot, and it would give us the opportunity to purchase a lot of food and feed a lot of children in the city. I also want to clarify that we do the same work as the Greater Boston Food Bank, but on a much smaller scale. If they're serving 600,000 people monthly, we're serving 75 in Middlesex and Essex County. We do distribute more than 2,000 pounds a week to our agencies, sometimes upwards of 6,000 pounds a month. It's been a really difficult time for everybody, and I feel for Rebecca and what they're going through, because the thing with the state and federal grants is you have to have the money to front. So they're all reimbursable. So if you don't have $50,000 in your coffers, then you can't apply for CDBG unless you have a fiscal agent that's willing to put that money up for you. We're fortunate, along with Coalition for a Better Acre, to have the money that we can front for our programs, then submit for reimbursement. So I do understand that a lot of the smaller organizations can't do that within their budgets. But if we go back to, this is the first year where I really believe that the city thought that they were doing everybody a favor with the amounts of monies allocated. Because if we get $15,000 for our children's feeding program, that's 1 month worth of food for 10 months that we purchase. So being able to apply for $50,000 or $100,000 for us was terrific. But again, we would take the 15, it wouldn't go, like we're ready to submit for reimbursement before we've even signed the contract because we've already spent that money. But other organizations here in the city aren't able to do that. So I do agree with Rebecca on that point. I don't know what the answer is. Like, we are very fortunate, and I do want to say we're not a pantry, and people confuse us all the time. Here in Lowell, we're serving over 35 feeding programs and 26 schools. So we don't have people coming to the food bank. Well, we do, but not in droves. We don't have an open pantry day where people come and get bags of food from us. Instead, they go to CBA Food Pantry, Central Food Ministry, Salvation Army, or open pantry of Greater Lowell. And Rebecca was correct. We all get this state and federal food. There's money in both budgets that are allocated for food. The state emergency feeding program, MEFAP, is a $50 million line item in the state budget. That is shared with 4 food banks in this state, of which we are, they like to say the smallest, but we're about the same size as Worcester County. And we get 5% annually. Greater Boston Food Bank gets 68% of that $50 million. That's why they're able to distribute more food. So I understand when an organization may choose to go into I'm not insulted. It's not a competition for us. We collaborate with Greater Boston all the time, in particular on that $50 million line item. I, for one, appreciate all the support we receive from the city. That grant, that FY26, we wrote specifically that the food bank was going to serve 5 schools in the city. And the money that CBA received was to support their after-school program and their pantry. So we're not even using that money for our food distribution program. And I believe it was Elliot provided us with a census of the city that told us what sections of the city we can spend CDBG funds on. So there could be schools in the city that are excluded based on their geographical location. So we chose Stocklosa, Bartlett, Merkland, Lowell High School, and I think the Moody School fell into that. So I don't know if anyone has any questions for me about that, but
No, thank you for coming down.
thank you
And
very
Thank you for
much.
everything you do for our community. It's extremely important.
Thank you.
I
I
mean,
appreciate
one
your
of our
time.
major issues is that the opera money's gone. And we don't have the ability to do the things we did for the last few years. And I think that CFO Baldwin could probably outline that better than anybody in here. And when you see that ability to try to give back to a community, no other community around us has done that. Dracut didn't do it, Tingsboro didn't do it, Dunstable didn't do it. You look around us, no one else has done this. We gave millions of dollars away trying to help places like yourself get their feet underneath them in a very, very challenging time. And I think that that's credit to the management team of the city, and also credit to the city council and the DPD staff for their hard work in saying, we really need to give back. We did that. I think that as we look forward to this nonprofit subcommittee, which I think we've met the most in the last 2 years than any other time in the nonprofit subcommittee, and we tried to really build that rapport with everybody that we are here for you. There's challenges on our end. We're going to see probably the worst time in our budget in the last probably 10 years, this budget that's coming up. There's challenges within it, and we're going to have to make tough decisions also. And we feel for everybody in here. When a government has trillions of dollars to give to other people, and they go after $3 million in the city of Lowell, it's ridiculous. They didn't even put a penny towards the home, in the home ownership piece in the last 10 years, and they tell you how great they're doing on the federal level. We need people with voices who are going to buck the system to try to change the system. If we sit here and just okay everything, we're not going to change anything. And I think it's a credit to DPD, it's a credit to the manager's staff, it's a credit to the council for being here. And I hope that whoever takes over this subcommittee, I hope I still have a chance to be the chair of it, we'll meet in January in between this so that we can, before it's actually due, the RFP, so people can have a voice in what they disagree with right away, so that we can try to have a week or so to manage something, talking to the DPD staff and the manager's office. I think that's the important meeting. This one's, okay, here's our information. Ms. Byers Rose and her staff is going to come out and say, okay, we're going to get out to everybody that has submitted in the past. I mean, we're not going to be able to reach people unless they submitted in the past. And then say, okay, are you happy? can we do better? Is there something that we can help with? And hopefully we all can transition into this. I think this is nitpicking out of a federal budget down to the street level, which is going to hurt people, and it's not helping.
I'm sorry. Rebecca had mentioned the loss of $15,000 in federal food. I would just say we get a third of our food from the USDA. We're not going to get a third of it this year. They're already cutting back. So everybody is feeling that. And we're actually planning like we're not going to get that food FY27. So
Yeah, I mean, you can see some of the programs.
thank
Ms.
you.
Rose, can you talk again about the Emergency Solutions Grant and how that's less than $200,000?
Yeah, I mean, that's all we get from the federal government to
Can you
help with
imagine?
homelessness in the community. So
Can you imagine?
we're able to supplement some of that because organizations will apply for ESG and then also apply for CDBG and are able to sort of utilize CDBG to help support some of their programming. But yeah, I mean, for assistance with shelter operations and homelessness diversion and that kind of street outreach, it's less than $200,000, which I think, you know, for a community like Lowell, for any community, frankly, that has any amount of homelessness, $200,000 when we're talking about, you know, individual home budgets is a big deal. $200,000 when you're talking about the city, the size of Lowell, and for the expenses that are required to put people in shelter or into permanent housing is negligible.
It's less than
nothing.
an electric bill at the school I work at. You know, and when you think about some of the things, if CFO Baldwin had the number at the top of his head about how much that the city actually spent on the homeless issue, whether it was going out with the co-op team and all the other things that we think about, we've probably went 10, 15, 20 times the 200 grand, you know, and it's sad that the government can't take care of their own people. And you know, and I just wanted to highlight the other things in here so it just didn't get overrun by just the food issue. But there's a lot more. There's the affordable home ownership. There's, you know, the emergency grants for shelter and stuff like that for the homeless people. So climate change piece is very important. If we want to get some of these electric bills, I hope no one opened up their gas bill like I did the other day and almost fell over. But I don't know how people are actually affording the things that they have today. But we thank you again.
I'll have to work till I'm 100 years old. My God.
Well, that means you got about 30 more terms on the city council, so that'll be good. But if no one else has anything to add,
Motion to adjourn.
we'll have a motion to adjourn by Councilor Noon, seconded by Councilor Mercia. Thank you all for coming out tonight, and stay warm.